Hey, it's Kim, and I'm back with another video all about exploring a few different weekly layouts in my daily planner. The planner I'm currently using is the Sterling Ink Common Planner in the N1 size, which is also Standard Traveler's Notebook size. And I do have the full year. So back in February, I actually did a little experiment. I wanted to explore a few different types of weekly layouts and think more about who the different layouts would most benefit. So I do have that video on my channel, and of course I'll have it linked down below for you. Going into October, I actually thought it would be pretty cool to do that again. Not only for the benefit of exploring different weekly options that I could suggest to others, but really because I was just wanting to switch it up and I wanted to explore to see if I could find something else that I would also love. So back when I did that experiment in February, I did find a few, was it a few? Maybe a couple of weeklies that I tried over an extended period of time. So there was one in particular that I dubbed my nolty layout, and I really kind of fell in love with it and decided to use that through March, April, May, June. Okay, in July, I went back to my typical timetable layout. So the nolty layout, again, I did fall in love with it, still love it. I haven't, however, been back to it since June. Since June, I've just been using my timetable layout, which is kind of like home base for me. It's just the layout that seems to work really well because I treat my weekly layouts as sort of a dashboard in general. Like I need to see everything at a glance that's going on for the week, not just my schedule, but also what dinners we're gonna have as a family, also what workouts I'm doing, a weekly task list that I want to organize, and I do like to see how I use my time. So not only a plan for the week ahead, but also I'm able to reflect on it and see how I actually use my time. So that's why the timetable layout works extremely well for me. The nolty layout, I mean, did the same thing, honestly. It was just basically shifting the information to different parts of the weekly spread. So I know for myself what I like to see on my weekly spread, and it's just a matter of putting it into position so that it works best for my brain. And that's it. I explained this in a recent video all about doing like a planner audit and really understanding yourself and understanding the information that you use your planner for. So the information that you really want to obtain and want to see and want to document in your planner, and kind of going from there. Once you know all of that, it's easy to switch your layouts up. It's easy to kind of explore, and even before trying out a layout, you can actually look at something and be like, that's not going to work for me. So for October, I went through and I set up a few different layouts. I think at the beginning of the month, I was only going to do 4, I believe. I ended up doing 5. So I started with 4. Here I'm setting up all of the layouts and kind of getting the framework down because I did have a general idea of, like I said, the information that I want on each spread. So the first layout is actually something that I saw in the Sterling Ink Facebook group. And there's a user whose name I did write down that I need to reference. Okay, so the first layout that I'm using, I was really excited to use it. I saw this, like I said, on the Sterling Ink Facebook group, and a user named April. I don't have her Instagram handle. If I did or if I do, actually, I'll put it down below. If you guys know who I'm talking about, let me know and I'll update the description. But her username on Facebook is her full name, and I don't want to put her on blast. Her first name is April, and she showed a few layouts in her planner where she was using this setup. And I really liked how it condenses all of the days to one side and then puts the notes and other information or whatever else I want to put down, like a weekly task list or whatever else, on the other side. However, it doesn't just limit me to only putting the days on one page of that 2-page spread. So as you can see, the 7 days do span across the 2 pages, not all the way. It's split top and bottom, and I do feel like it gives me the same amount of daily space that I would have in my nolty layout. Actually, it gives me a little bit more. So this is an example of the nolty layout, and you can see up at the top of the spread is where I would keep information for any timed tasks or day specific tasks. So with this layout, it gives me a little bit more space, a little bit more room, but also on this layout, should I have a name? It's April's layout. I don't know. That's what I'm gonna call it for right now. But on this spread, I also do have enough space on each day to have a spot designated for my workouts for the day, as well as for the dinners for that day. So I like that as well. Whereas on the nolty layout, I put that information down at the bottom of the planner spread. So I like how each day has its own thing. And I don't exactly remember what April put on her like right side of the page. I feel like she was tracking some things. Might have been just like a general tracker, but if you followed me for any amount of time, you know that my trackers are all grouped together in another place in my planner, so I didn't need that on my weekly spread necessarily. I have, however, been tracking my sleep lately. So as you'll notice, a common theme in all of these weekly layouts, I did designate a spot to track my sleep hours, and sometimes I'll note down a bit more information that I get from my Apple Watch. So like how much time I'm awake during the middle of the night, how much deep sleep I got, how much core sleep, how much REM, all of that is available. And on some of the layouts, I did note that information. So with these 2 side areas, so outside of the sections for the days, I had to decide where I wanted to put my task list, where to put the sleep tracker, and where to put information for next week. Since I set up my weeklies as I go, or I have been doing it as I go, I do find that I like to have a next week section. So I put that at the bottom right. And even though I feel like a task list kind of deserves a bit more space, like I might have put that over on the right, I do know myself, and if I give myself like 40 lines, 40 spaces to put a task list, I'm gonna write in 40 tasks, even though like only 3 of them are only gonna get done. So I decided to put my task list in the upper left because that requires me to really think about what's worthy of putting on that task list, and it limits that space that I have available. So that's fine. Also, I did want to be able to track not only my sleep, but my actual energy levels. I felt that having those 2 things together in the same little chart would be helpful. Also, having those things together in the same little chart would be pretty. So I wanted those together. So I decided to put those over on the left-hand side. However, if you are tracking fewer items, the tracker probably would make a lot more sense over on the left-hand side, and then your task list over on the right-hand side. But this is how I chose to set up the layout. As you can see, here we are. The full week is filled out, and I actually really loved it. I fell in love with this one a lot more than I thought I would. So like I said, knowing myself, I know what information I want to have on the spread, so I knew how to make it work for me. I just didn't know if it would 100% click with my brain, and this 100% clicks with my brain. So needless to say, at the beginning of this experiment, I found a winner. I still forged ahead with all of the other spreads that I had planned. So the next spread is actually inspired by Genevieve, and she's on Instagram as jens.happyspot. And I think I saw her in the Facebook group as well. So that's where I found her images of her weekly, and it really did remind me of the nolty layout that I love so much, but I felt like it added space for a lot more information. So I was able to track down a lot more things. The setup was really easy. Just designate some space up at the top for the daily tasks and the timed appointments and everything, and it goes across the whole 2-page spread so that each day has its own kind of section. It's maybe, I was gonna say like 1/3 of the page, a little bit more than 1/3 that I'm designating up at the top for each day. And then the bottom is where I have my task list, and I did opt to put a dinners list and a workouts list and my sleep tracker also in the bottom right. After setting up this spread, I kind of felt like I had too much space at the bottom. So this would be great for somebody who does have a lot of things that they want to track, or has a lot of like lists and things that they need on their weekly spread, I think this really opens up so much space and so much opportunity to note down a whole lot of things on the weekly spread. For myself, because I felt like I kind of had a bit more space than I really needed. Again, I didn't want a lot of space for my task list, but I did allow it on the left-hand side and then a small portion at the bottom for next week. And even with the task list on the left-hand side, instead of doing like a 2-column task list, which I certainly could have done, I decided to make it more of an Alistair method where I have the list of tasks and then towards the right, I have a grid for each day of the week, and then I would check off what day the specific task happened. Alistair method or rolling weekly, I've heard it called a few different things. So that's the way I did organize my task list for this weekly. This is Jen's weekly, and I did like it, but again, I felt like I had a bit too much space. As you can see up at the top, I didn't need to fill in all the space with daily tasks because I use dailies. I think this also could be a good option for people who don't use dailies. And it certainly amazes me how in the same layout, depending on where you put what pieces of information, you have more space than you really realize. So this layout was really great. I loved it. I actually thought it would be a favorite, and it really reminds me of my nolty layout for that reason. It definitely is a favorite, but I think I would only use it when I have a lot of information that I need to track. So for instance, let's say I didn't have a business planner or I didn't have like my health planner. So those would be the areas that I would also track on this weekly spread, and that would work beautifully for me. Like even up at the top, I have enough space to section out personal tasks and maybe put like business tasks right down here for each day. I actually think that would work out perfectly. But because I'm the type of person who likes to separate those things, I don't need it on this weekly layout for me. But if you have a lot of information you need to track, and also if you are one of those community planners that I mentioned in my last planner audit video where I talked about planner personality types, if you're a community planner and you're planning for others besides yourself, it would allow space for you to do that on this weekly layout. The next weekly layout is, drumroll please, horizontal. I know I said in the last experiment that I hate the horizontal layout, which, I mean, I still do. I don't like to say hate. I don't like to use the word hate. It's just not a favorite. So let me go back to where I had it. It's not a favorite. However, I have used it in the past with great success. I've used it when I used to use a Hobonichi Weeks. I've used it when I used to use like the Moleskine weekly planner. It worked out beautifully for that time of my life. However, I think my brain just works best seeing lists in a vertical format. So the horizontal weeklies don't work out that great. And in my experiment back in February, I tried to use it the way I used to use it in my weeks, and I felt like I didn't have enough space for each day. Again, I'm a daily planner as well, so I do have dailies. So it's not like I felt like this was, you know, claustrophobic or anything because I did have that daily space, but to set up my overview, this didn't really work too well for me. So I decided to try it out again in October. I know I'm like a glutton for punishment, but I decided to try it out again, and I tried it in a way that I had split up horizontal layouts in the past that worked for me as well. So on the left-hand side where you have that horizontal space for each day, I decided to split that in half and have all of my timed things over on the left, and then all of my day-specific tasks on the right side of those columns that I split up for each day. Now, that did allow me to include a lot more items onto the spot or into the block for each day. So I did not feel claustrophobic in the spread in the least. So if you're a person who does love a horizontal layout, but you feel like sometimes you don't have enough space, consider creating 2 columns in that left-hand side. And that may work to help give you a lot more space to note down your daily task and anything else that you like to track for the day. On the right-hand side, I did add my task list and then the workouts for the week as well as the dinners for the week, and a significant amount of space in the middle for my sleep tracking, where I did also note down like deep sleep, awake time, core, and REM, and also wrote in a bit of a summary about how I slept for that week in general. And I did the same for the previous weeks, which I didn't quite show, or explain, I did also write down a summary of how my sleep went for the previous weeks. So that worked out really well, and I did allow a space at the bottom to write down anything I needed for next week. In this particular spread, I didn't even use that space, but it was good to know that I had it. Another thing I realized back in February is if I'm not tracking things or if I don't have separate lists, having the right-hand side just full of notes or available for notes is definitely too much space for me. In a week size, it might work for me. However, that would give me less space over on the left-hand side. So these are just things to take into account and to be aware of when you weigh them against how you prefer to plan. And backing up a bit, for the weeks where I did kind of redo the layout, which I think I might have done for most of these, I used whiteout, and I just used this Tombow hybrid style mono correction tape. So that's the whiteout I used to cover up the dates. And I used the date stickers that come in the Sterling Ink subscription kit. So this sheet, which gives you, this one is like nearly empty, but it gives you like the days of the week. It gives you a lot of different numbers. So that's what I used to put these spreads together, where I did have to move things around. So for this spread that was inspired by April, I whited out the dates that were pre-printed and used those stickers to put in the numbers and the names of the days. On the one that's Jen's spread, I didn't have to do anything because it's already a vertical planner. So those dates going across the top were already set up. And then for the horizontal, I did the same thing. I just whited out everything that was going across the top and used the Sterling Ink date stickers to put the number and the name of the day. So this horizontal weekly worked out a whole lot better than I've tried in the past. Will I try it out myself and actually commit to it and use it? Absolutely not. I'm just not a horizontal planner, and that's that. I mean, I know this. I knew this going in. I was just trying to see if I needed to make it work, how could I make it work? All right, the next one is another one that I wanted to revisit. This is a vertical weekly. Duh. So again, I didn't need to white out anything or redate, but I did want to use it in the traditional vertical weekly sense. And because I'm the type of person who likes to track what I'm doing with my time, this is good for me in that sense, but it only gets filled in kind of as the day is going. So I can't sit down on, say, like a Sunday before the Monday begins and plot out the whole week really, unless there's anything that's like a scheduled appointment, because I don't know exactly what I'm doing with the rest of my time. If I worked like a 9 to 5, like at an office, it would be easy enough to plot those things out, but I don't. So things switch around in the day. Maybe something that I thought would happen on a Tuesday is not happening on a Tuesday this week. It's going to be moved, you know, that session is going to be moved to a Thursday. So those are things that I can't plot out before the week begins. But as the week goes on, in this layout, it makes it easy to be a little bit more flexible. But because I'm the type of person who likes to see what's going to happen for the week before the week starts, this isn't necessarily ideal for me. However, the way I wanted to switch it up from my example back in February, I used the entire day top to bottom for all the stuff that was happening. I did end up with some space at the bottom that just didn't get used, and it wasn't quite enough space for me to do like a weekly task list. So that's what was really missing for me on this spread. So for this one, I decided to stop the days around 9 p.m. and then use that space at the bottom for my task list. I also did a mini sleep tracker, so I'm not tracking any awake time or any of that other information. It's just strictly how many hours I slept. And then I did have a small section to document what's going on for next week. And I left all of my dinner ideas on this sticky note. And now I'm actually just realizing this. I didn't note down any workouts or dinners that happened on the days this week. That actually kind of bugs me, because looking back, sometimes I want to know what I was doing or what was going on, you know, what the family ate for dinner so I can make sure I don't copy it going forward. So that was my bad. I definitely intended to document that on this spread like I did previously, but I guess I forgot. And then what I also did was I tried to establish a theme for each of the working days for this week. It kind of worked. it would kind of work for me. So this is a way that I could make the vertical layout work for me. And I'm documenting exactly when things happen throughout the day because I've allowed enough space for me to have a task list, and I would be able to stick in like workouts or dinners along the timetable for each day if I remembered. So I was able to use the traditional vertical weekly layout, but also add information that I find helpful, like the task list or like the theme for the day, like what I'm focusing on. And I added in a little tracker as well as a list for what might go on next week. So my goal was to take the vertical layout and add more information to it, but still use it as a time tracking vertical layout. And that's exactly what I did here, and it worked. Will I try it again? I don't know. Again, I just don't like seeing such an empty week. I don't like having to go in every day, you know, like on a Wednesday and have to fill in what's going on at what time of the day. That's not how I plan. I kind of set up my entire weekly, and then on the Wednesday, say the Wednesday morning, usually maybe Tuesday night, I set up my daily pages for what's going to happen on that Wednesday. And I just write down any appointments that are listed on my weekly already. And I write down any tasks that are already listed on my weekly for that day. And I really work off of the actual daily pages on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I'm working off my dailies daily. So anyway, that's how things went with this traditional vertical layout. All right, and the fourth one, oh wait, so that was the fourth one, and those were all the ones that I had planned, and I couldn't think of anything else when I first set up all the weeklies. I couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do for that fifth week. But as time went on, I did get inspiration from a video that Sarika Plans did. And it was a video all about, I think she was suggesting different monthly spreads. And in the video where she showed different monthly spreads, she actually showed kind of like grids that she set up along the page. And that just appealed to me for whatever reason. There were boxes like all around the page. Definitely check out her video if you want to see how she used this kind of layout for a monthly. But I was trying to think of how I could use it for a weekly. And I designated boxes for each of the days. And up at the top, I also had other boxes. So I had a box for the focus for the week. And then over on the top right, a box for workouts and a box for dinners. I clearly did no workouts this week, which is fine. And then at the bottom, this box for my sleep, where I did track my sleep hours as well as any awake minutes and deep sleep and core and REM. And then on the right hand side, I had a box to document things that were gonna be happening the following week. I really did like this layout. I have absolutely no complaints. I like the structure of the boxes. Sometimes I do like structure, sometimes. Not a lot of the time. So I don't know that I would use this layout very regularly. Also, if you'll notice, so the boxes that I made for each day are pretty much horizontal. And this week I had no reason to separate these horizontal boxes into two columns. I guess because I had enough space. I don't know if I would have, because I also didn't want it to look too busy or to look too full. So I only kept it to one list of tasks, one column of a list for tasks for each of the days for the week. And then for Saturday and Sunday, I split those into smaller boxes since I don't typically tend to have a lot of things on my planner in terms of tasks for those days. So I do actually really like how this layout turned out. I did have to white out a lot. So if that bothers you, you may or may not love altering like your vertical layout or even your horizontal layout to allow more space for the day. You may not like that. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like looking at the camera, I can see the lines from the whiteout a lot clearer than I can in person. So it doesn't bother me too much. Also, I think I have like a 20 pack of these. So I have a lot of whiteout. If you don't, or correction tape, I should say, if you don't, that would kind of be annoying to use a lot of this, especially over the course of several weeks. But I don't know, you know, pick your adventure. You decide if this is something that you would undertake. But I love the structure of it. I love how it looks a little minimalist, at least to my eye. And that's also another reason why I didn't want to add a second column of tasks for each of the days. I kind of wanted to keep it a little bit open. So this will be great for you if you are the same. If you're a person who is a little bit more minimalist and you don't like to see a whole lot on the page, I think this will be a great layout for you. I also really love that I was able to define a focus for the week. I actually do this mentally, but I don't usually write it down anyplace. Sometimes in my business planner, I will set a focus for the week for business stuff, but not just for like personal things. But I like that option or that ability to establish a focus for the week. And I actually am thinking how I can incorporate that in my weekly spreads going forward. I'll figure that out. We will see. But those are the 5 weekly layouts that I explored and I tried out throughout the month of October and into that first week of November. And I did actually have a lot of fun setting up all of the weeklies, finding the weeklies that I could use, and kind of just exploring to see what I would like, what I wouldn't like, any things I would change in regards to how I have been used to planning so far for the past several months, which is my timetable layout, as I call it. So I have found out some things, like maybe I want a space to designate the focus for the week on my weekly layout. I think that would be a great idea, and I want to do that going forward. So since doing this experiment, for me personally, I decided that, no surprise, this layout that was inspired by April was my favorite, and I wanted to, or want to, continue to use it and build upon it to make it work for my life. And that's actually what I did. This is the first full week of November after we did the 5 weeks of example weeklies. So I started with that layout again, and it's set up exactly the same. And I have my sleep tracking and my energy and a little summary. And then I have next week and I have everything for the days. I did stamp the day headings. I don't even know if you can see that, but I really love this layout, and I like how this one evolved and how, you know, how it filled out as the week went on. And I do intend to, I think, continue with this layout at least for the rest of November. And as you can see, this is the current week, and it looks a little bit busier in my brain, which I don't love, but I also just need to get used to it. I'm only a couple days into the week, and I have all these sticky notes that do need to move and do need to shift. I did not even record my sleep and energy for Monday and Tuesday yet. I'll get back to that. But this is the one that I have set up for the current week. And like I said, I'm going to continue to use this weekly for the next couple of weeks of November. Will I bring it into December? I don't know yet. We shall see. I'm happy to have discovered another weekly layout that I could use and that really works best for my brain so that I don't feel like I'm stuck using one specific layout. So that's another little thing about me. One, I don't like a whole lot of structure all the time. Sometimes I don't want boundaries on where I can fit a specific thing on a spread for whatever reason. But the other thing is that I like to have options. I don't want to feel like I can only use this vertical layout exactly the way it was created. I don't think that to be true at all. So I'm glad that I have this other way to use the weekly layouts along with my typical timetable layout, as well as that nolty layout that I grew to love as well. So I'm excited to continue using it and to see how it's going to evolve over the next few weeks. And of course, if you want to see that, definitely subscribe so you don't miss my November flip through video, which will likely post around the beginning of December. And if you want to see whether or not I'm going to use this weekly for the month of December, subscribe so you don't miss my December plan with me. That should actually be coming out next week as well. So currently I'm undecided, but we'll see. Once I get around to setting up December in my planner, I think I want to do all of my weeklies up front like I usually do. So I'm going to have to pick one. So we'll see which one I use for December also. Thank you so much for following along on today's video and exploring all of these different weekly layouts that I went through. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below and I'll get right back to you. Suggestions for other weekly layouts that maybe I could try out, leave those as well. I like trying new things. Again, I'll have anyone I mentioned linked down below, hopefully like the Instagram or some type of contact information on the screen or down below, because I do believe in giving people credit where credit is due. And again, I thank you so much for following along on today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.